So then what is the solution? Because I don't think it's that we adopt China's model.
No, we couldn't. Like, A, we don't want to because we believe in not that, and B, it's antithetical to our system. I mean, there's a first thing, which is just information, right? So, like, even if state and local level leaders realize that this is a problem, they then have to be equipped with information to make the right decisions on outreach. So, for example, there's no list out there of Chinese state-owned entities or military-tied entities that could be issued by, for example, the federal government, and then that state and local level leaders could consult when they had investment outreach. Obviously, that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of problematic Chinese players, but it's still a pretty big tip of the iceberg.
It's a great first step.
Even for those who are resistant to this idea of this reality that no Chinese company is a private company, if you say here are state-owned and military-tied companies, be careful about them, that's going to be a pretty easy thing to message. Then also there's having the positive alternative, because state and local level leaders need to know that if they say no to the Chinese solar investment in their district, somebody else might make that investment. And the failure of the United States to invest in its own industry and manufacturing is what has allowed Beijing to make these inroads. That paired with guardrails on those investments. So like we talked about Build Back Better, what if Build Back Better is actually the Buy American provisions in that are actually implemented, right? So then we are making these investments. State and local level leaders don't have to turn to China, and the investments are being made by U.S. players, not co-opted by Chinese ones. You have this whole web of Chinese government organs that are either explicitly acting as such or not explicitly acting as such, and those should be prevented from operating in the United States. And part of it's as easy as saying, CPA-FFC, you're an agent of a foreign state, stop with these activities. And part of that is more complicated and probably would require better vetting protocols for nonprofits in the U.S.
Well, so what about the sister city arrangements? That seems like it could be a potential leverage point.
Exactly. Sister city relationships. Again, the State Legislators Forum, the trade delegations that CPA-FFC organizes, all of these lines of effort under that united front entity, those are prime organizational nodes that you could target as a very direct first step.
Well, I think tell us a little bit more about the sister city arrangement. How does China use that?
Yeah, these are interesting because they exist broadly. So sister city relationships are not unique to China or to China-US. It's something that's gone, these have existed for decades. All countries have them. French and U.S. cities have sister city relationships. And most of the time, they really just mean a sign at the side of the road. It's very pro forma and just a nice little thing that these cities have a relationship. Beijing, however, has realized that they can be channels for influence. And it's very indirect. It's a little bit unclear or difficult to document how precisely China takes advantage of them. What's clear is that Beijing frames them as means to exert influence, that they're managed by CPA-FFC as part of its influence campaigns, and that China actually actively works to make sure that as part of the sister city relationships, and especially particularly strategic ones, so ones with bigger cities or ones that are more strategically valuable, as part of those, there's a clear channel for communication and potentially for exchange, whether that's of people or of financial resources. So often, there'll be sister city labeled events or dialogues that might be accompanied by the announcement of an investment.
How do people tell the difference between these cultural people-to-people type exchanges versus influence operations?
It's really, really difficult. I don't think that's an accident, right? China has very explicitly fused these two lines of effort so that all of it ends up fueling a certain ambition. And it means that you end up in a position where one way or another, identification or action is going to be unfair, and where you're making a big choice between efficiency and effectiveness. You could go through every single exchange and really try to parse it at the most detailed level and decide if it was cultural exchange or influence. And you may or may not succeed even then, but you would be expending so many resources. Or you can say, we're okay with this level of risk, that some of this is influenced, as long as there's general awareness as to the risks, and let it happen. Or you end up cutting off exchanges that are, perfectly benign.
Yeah, I was thinking about how, back when our next New York City mayor, Eric Adams, he was the Brooklyn borough president before, and China had reached out to him on many occasions.
He went on several trade delegation kind of trips there.
Right, and there was some talk of building like a friendship arch, which never actually got built, right? But it was...
No, I mean, they were going to build this China-U.S. friendship arch in the Brooklyn Chinatown. And, millions of dollars were going to be set aside to do this. It didn't happen.
I mean, it's interesting because, it's just Brooklyn. It's not even its own city, right? It's just like a...
But the Brooklyn borough president, Eric Adams, went to China 7 times.
Yeah.
And then became New York City mayor.
Yeah.
No, that's true, too.
Yeah, it's that the CCP is very good about getting in at all levels early on. So then when somebody does become a mayor or a governor, they already have those connections.
Well, this is like the Eric Swalwell thing, right?
Yeah.
Where he wasn't a congressman. He was just a local official. And then there was a Chinese spy who was already trying to target him, along with lots of other local government politician level people.
Yeah, cast a wide enough net. But what's interesting about everything you're saying, from 2000 on, we were told, the more interactions there are between the U.S. and China, the more China will change. China will become more, it'll become more of a democracy. People will get more rights, et cetera, et cetera. But everything you're saying, it's just China continues to influence the U.S., but it seems like in these sister city agreements, it's not like the U.S. is having any influence in China. How is that just such a thing that there seems to be no? It's only a one-way street as far as who is influencing who.
Exactly. It's absolutely one-sided influence, and the more interactions we have, it seems the more the U.S. changes, or the more Beijing is able to infiltrate our system. It's not unlike the trading relationship. Right, we had this idea that the more trade there was, the more the U.S. would benefit, and also the more we would open up China. And we've seen the reverse. And when U.S. companies go into the Chinese market, what they find is that they might have some early success, but then they forfeit their technological advantages, and a Chinese domestic champion comes up, and then they find the U.S. company finds itself pushed out of the market. Turns out they didn't get anything. China benefited in a one-sided way. I think we see the same thing in terms of political exchange, and it's a function of China's remarkable control over its system and insularity, and also its very clear strategic agenda. We haven't had one of those, and we've been willing to treat cooperation or exchange as just that, cooperation or exchange, whereas Beijing has seen them as channels to be weaponized across the board.
Now, you said you have seen things start to change. Do you think that is the beginning of some kind of national directive within the United States about just sort of a collective understanding of what is actually at stake now?
I think there's no doubt that over the past 5 years, and especially over the past 2 years, the U.S. recognition of the challenge China poses, the degree to which Beijing has infiltrated our system, and the risks of that has grown tremendously. You no longer have to convince people. So definitely there's an awareness. Does that mean a national level directive? It's yet to manifest as such. We've reached this point in multiple interludes where you said, wow, there is a widespread consensus in Washington or between the two political parties or in the executive branch or now even among subnational leaders, that this is something we have to do, this being eradicate China's influence in the US. But even as we've said that, and even as we've seen such consensus, we've also continued to see gridlock and back and forth and infighting, and every step forward see effectively 2 steps back, which I think is a testament to how strong China's influence is, right? Because whether that's Koch lobbying against the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act or one advocate in the executive branch successfully stonewalling a piece of anti-China policy, it's not necessarily an accident. And I think this is going to be a much more difficult contest to organize strategically around as a country, because we're not like an insulated country recognizing a strategic adversary. We're a country that's been infiltrated by that strategic adversary, trying at the same time to extract it from our decision-making process and to form a competitive response.